Hi, I'm Dr. Dan Ratner. Today I am joined by Phil Koo, who connected with me towards the beginning of the podcast in his efforts to get better from foot pain and other mind-body symptoms. We're here now to check in with him on his progress. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and we'll get back to you personally. And finally, you can reserve your place in one of my seminars, join my monthly membership group, or purchase any of my mind-body guides, also known as the PDFs, at www.crushingdoubt.org. Now, without further ado, here is my conversation with Phil on the latest developments in his mind-body work. Phil, it is a pleasure to have you back here, and I'm really excited, especially because I already know some of what you're going to say because we traded some emails about it, but we're going to get to hear your progress. And so what I want to do is jump back, because for some viewers, they'll be tuning in and maybe they didn't catch the first interview with you. Just share a little bit about what you were going through when you first contacted me.
Well, it's great to be here again, Dan. And last time we had our conversation, I think I was just getting over, or I had just gotten over this swollen foot that I was having. Mm-hmm. So that was the physical side of it. And it was like so swollen that I could hardly walk on it some days, or at least that stiff and painful. And it was actually it would move from like the second toe down towards the pinky toe. And then back up again. And yeah, we had 2 sessions, and yeah, it cleared up. It took some time, but I think what would really help was just sort of pushing it all aside, like not dwelling on the physical stuff. And the power, getting back into that power column.
Well, I was just thinking what I recall about back then, because it's kind of been a blur since then. There's been a lot happening for us both. What I recall is that one of the things that spoke to you about my work that was different than some of the other mind-body work was the emphasis on the doubt column, but in particular the power column. That is what I'm remembering. Of course, we had to work on doubt because, as I say to many people, or really everybody I work with, you got to remove the doubt first. But after that, there was a lot of power column stuff, and it did seem like that sent you on a different journey and freed you up from thinking so much about the symptom. Can you just speak to what that process was like for you, at least at the beginning as you worked through it?
Yeah, what comes to mind is that if I'm not pursuing something in the power column, something that appeals to me, something that is creatively engaging, then I'm just going to fill my mind and my thoughts with junk, with worries and like paperwork and all this stuff that it always will pile up. So if I don't get into that power column every day for myself, then like I said, it's just going to be I'm just going to be going in circles in terms of worries and stressful thoughts. So that's like, if you want to know more specifics, you want to get into more specifics about that?
I definitely do. I just wanted to note one thing before we do.
Yeah.
What you're describing is what I call living in the power column. And it really is the case that one of the reasons the power column is so useful is it allows us to live in the places that are productive and aligned with ourselves and all the good stuff. And it does take the space of all that junk that can come rushing in. So I really appreciate the way that you're expressing it, because it highlights something very important about why it is so important to use the power column in the way that we do. And I don't remember if I had this term even at the time I talked to you, but I talk about something called attentional TMS. It's where you cannot stop paying attention to the symptoms. You just keep going over and over, and you focus on the symptoms. And I'm feeling this and this and this. And I say to people who are having attentional TMS, once they get past the fear of it all, that they have to get into the power column. That's the answer to the obsession. It's almost like we have to choose a new obsession, but a good obsession, and a widespread good obsession that's just about how we want to live. And it sounds like that's what you've done.
Well, that brings up thinking of what Dr. Sarno said about the fear, is that the fear is even greater than the pain that one can experience, because you can be pain-free, but in constant fear. So that, I think that, like the way you expressed it with having what was it? Attentional
TMS is what I call it.
Attentional TMS. Yeah. And I can see it in other people. And it's nice that you put a little phrase around it, because now I can really, because I've been seeing that in other people and in myself, and then now having a term for it is really useful.
Yeah, the little terms are useful. I try to label everything in a way that kind of makes it so you can see what's happening and understand it. So let's jump now to what you were about to go into, because when you were last on the podcast and show, you said that there were many times where I think you felt optimistic or you had made certain gains. What I recall is you had made a huge leap forward in your mindset at that time. You were feeling optimistic, but you hadn't yet mastered the physical symptom that much, of the foot at least. I think the other symptoms were clearing up.
I'm not sure exactly. I couldn't say what exactly I did necessarily in an acute sense of, night and day where I did this and then the symptoms disappeared. I think it was more of a gradual process of continuing to live in the power column and having the, as you say, attention TMS gradually reduce as well. And my attention to the power column without being perfectionistic about it, but being like learning just to enjoy the process rather than expecting a certain outcome.
Yeah.
We're still having pleasurable goals. That really, if I had to reflect, I think that's what did it. It was moving towards that, wanting to be, feeding the power column, but in a way that's being aware of my perfectionistic side and tendencies.
It's a beautifully phrased and set up way to think about it, because the reality is, yes, you want to be really in that power column, but if you get perfectionistic about it, in a way, you slip out of the power column. You start to think, I've got to do it this way, and then you start to get fear, or you start to get upset in various ways, and that's not powerful. So
I'm in a sense, you would be applying the same logic or thinking to your remedy, to the solution, as you got you into the problem in the first place.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
You would set the problem on the solution.
Yeah.
And then it becomes not the solution again. All right, so I want to find out what's happened for you. You shared some exciting updates. I want to hear about them.
Yeah, the reason why I reached out is because I thought, this is when I reflect on my own story, sometimes I feel like, well, this is really beautiful what's going on right here. And I wanted to share that with you because, well, you're the man who helped me, and I think it would give you some joy too, to hear about one of your patients.
It sure does.
Yeah. So this end of June and early July, so June 28th to June 2nd, there's a festival in Paris. It's a juggling and interdisciplinary arts festival, performance arts. And my friends and I, who play this ball game called Chinlone, have been invited to perform. And we're our accommodation, our tickets, all that stuff is being paid for. So it's really it's incredible for us. We're really excited. Yeah.
How did we got to back up. How long have you been doing this?
So I learned about this game right after university. So that's 15 years ago or so. And I played this on and off because of pain. So I'd learn a bit, with my perfectionistic tendency, try and get good, never feel good enough, be in all sorts of pain, and also other conditions in my life weighing heavily on me, and trying to be successful and whatnot. And then I'd give it up for years, pick it back up. And then around 6-7 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, I said, you know what, I'm gonna actually pursue this a bit more regularly, without the sort of I need to be great at it, but just I'm gonna do this. And then my friends and I, they set up an organization online, sort of like a website or something, for us foreigners who play this game. So this game is from Myanmar, from Burma, and it's one of the oldest games that's still played. It's 1,500 years old, and it's non-competitive, which is ironic because you can get really in your head about not being good at it against other comparing yourself to other people. But yeah, this festival, because it's juggling, the way this game is played, you keep the ball in the air and you do all sorts of tricks. It's like team juggling with your feet. And they've seen this, they reached out to us and they said, would you perform? And then this was already 2 years ago, and then COVID happened, the pandemic and the lockdowns. So we put it off, and this year they reached out to us again. I said, guys, if we don't do it this year, like, what are we doing here? There's always going to be something, so
Mm-hmm.
let's dip into that, let's jump into that power column and do this.
I mean, it
I
does
didn't
sound like you really led on that on top of everything else.
Yeah, I had watched, I don't know if you've seen the documentary 14 Peaks
Oh
with
no, I haven't seen.
Nims Dai. So it's this guy from Nepal, and this man, and he climbs the highest 14 mountains to the summit in 7 months, just under 7 months. It's incredible.
Wow.
And he's really like motivational. It's like, there's nothing you can't do. And so I watched that. I was just full of energy and excitement. I said, come on, let's do this. I can go to France. It's like I'm climbing Mount Everest and the other 13 more peaks. So
So
uh,
when you were having the foot pain, did you have to take a break from the game entirely, or what was that like?
no, I could play with my left foot. I would still play a bit. There's like, I could balance. There's like balancing moves. But now that I look back on it, I don't even know I would still do a lot of physical exercise, maybe like upper body stuff that not necessarily about the game, but I would always still try and hammer through some training, just telling myself like, there's no permanent damage. It's I know this is going to go away eventually. And then if it was just too much, I'd just say, okay, well, you don't need to force yourself to do it either. You can accept that, you got some pain, do something else, it'll go away. Just don't be perfectionistic about the overcoming of it as well.
So then over this time between when we last talked on the podcast itself and now, it sounds like it did kind of just slowly dissipate
Hmm.
as you lived in the power column, as I put it. That's my term for it. But um, did you almost? Some people describe it, and I certainly had this experience. Well, I'll speak for myself. I almost forgot to have pain. It was like I just completely forgot to do it.
Yeah, it's like it's not there anymore, and you're like, oh, that thing that was always on my mind is just suddenly not there. But there's no emptiness in my mind, right? It's just
That's the
filled with
thing.
other stuff.
Yeah, emptiness. I mean, look, when we meditate, we try to empty our minds, but this kind of emptiness is not that.
Hmm.
This is the kind of emptiness that is a void that can be filled by any worry, any
Hmm.
doubt. And when you live in the power column, there is no void there.
Yeah, I'm sure that my mind just grasped onto the next thing, and I'm very suspicious of some other things that are going on right now. Like, I have like facial acne and dandruff and stuff, and those have always been with me. So I put those into the TMS
For sure.
category. But what can they're not going to waste. But what can I do? I'm not going to stress about it. Um, Maybe I need to book another session with Dr. Radner here.
Yeah, well, I mean, that kind of thing, it may be that there's some lingering doubt, or it could be that there's some emotional things that are driving it.
Hmm.
So we can look in all the columns. But interestingly, it does not sound like the power column is the problem at all. That's leading the charge towards total relief and getting rid of the symptoms. I do want to encourage you, though. There are things we can do about that. So, sure, we can meet again if you need to.
Well, another thing regarding the power column was that I've been doing more stand-up comedy as well and enjoying that. And I know I'm not very funny on this podcast, but I try my best on the
You've already
microphone
made me
and
laugh a
stage.
couple times.
Now doing comedy more often, or accepting that's something I like and want to do more of. That has given me a looseness, I'd say. It's a bit more looseness. Again, I have to be wary of the perfectionistic side, but definitely calm, like not holding back on saying, well, I can't do it because I'm this age already, or I don't have the financial means or whatever the what is it, the
Barrier?
reason the barrier could be, yeah, that comes up, like, hey, just do it at whatever means you can at this point, and more and more, and just put yourself in there,
I
into
mean,
that.
I would describe that as you're taking doubts and getting rid of them. You're saying,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I observe that doubt, I see it, but I'm not going to let it stop me. And you counter the doubt, you challenge it, you push back against it. And this is where the power column is so important. You if the power column's flowing really well, you can use it against every doubt. And it's almost now your instinct, which is what happens when you're living in the power column. It's your instinct. When you sense a doubt, you just kind of immediately move towards, no, I don't have to be limited by that.
Yeah, because I've also had a lot of familial, like, there's been a lot of familial difficulties, that where, like, my mother's been sick, and it puts a lot of stress on us, like just the caretaking and whatnot, and then not neglecting the power column, like, still, like you said, go instinctively going back to the power. So doing my exercise, and my mother wouldn't want me not to do these things. That's the ironic thing. Like, you beat myself up for, like, taking care of myself, but my mom doesn't want me to not enjoy myself and take care of myself and pursue these goals either. She wouldn't want to feel like the reason that I'm abandoning those things either.
Right.
So I have to deal with that sort of, I don't know, that guilt that I might have, or again, feelings of inadequacy, as a son or as a caretaker, and say, you know what, I gotta be my own caretaker as well.
It's a really nice way of putting it, and a good observation that we have multiple paths in our lives. It's not just what's my path with my, dealing with my parents. It's also what's my path with me, and they're their own things.
And to be a good caretaker, I have to be good to myself. And if I believe that many of my mother's symptoms are TMS in related, or even outright TMS issues. I mean, there's a reason why I have TMS, right? And often it's our parents that carried traumas over, or schooling conditions that they were in, expected societal norms that have carried over to us. And if I can't address my own emotional issues, then if I just focus on her physical symptoms, I mean, that's just going to exacerbate hers as well, right? So that's another reason why I take care of myself too.
It's wonderful to see you doing so well. I just want to highlight two different aspects of how you're doing well, though, because this is, a lot of times people think, I just want the relief from the symptoms. And that is certainly very understandable, and it's half of the equation. But then there's also this living in the power column thing that you're doing. I did want to note, though, when you went to get the ball right before the interview, you mentioned it sounds like you ran down the stairs and back up.
Oh, yeah.
No issues.
None. No. The one, it's funny, since I emailed you back, or like since I got back in touch with you, I did check my foot, and I said, like, oh, there is, like, I do notice that it's just not like the left foot, but I never thought of it until I emailed you again. Right. So
there goes the attentional TMS flaring up just a little bit.
Don't email back about past issues, only new ones.
You know what's funny? I think this will make you laugh, Phil, but when I sit down with people, actually this is not really true anymore, but when I used to sit down with people when I was just had recovered and I was starting to do this work, I was aware that in talking to them, it would inflame my awareness. And I would start attending to my symptoms. It's the same thing. So I had to learn how to dip into this without attending to my symptoms. Now I do it so much that I just don't think about it at all. But it used to be then that it would be like, you're fine, you're fine, you're fine. And then it'd get talked about and boom, it would flare up. And that's why the idea of attentional TMS really is particularly useful. It's important to realize, yes, we are going to get hooked on that every once in a while. The way to get unhooked is the power.
having that attentional TMS as a concept, as a noun, right? As something that I can say, like, this is a process now that's happening. Whereas most people just think, oh, I have pain. It's just, it must be some physical it must have a physical cause. But having the TMS, like, even for us who are aware of the TMS process, the attentional TMS, I think is a great tool. I'm gonna use that
That's
for
great.
myself. Yeah.
And the funny thing is, the thing you have to do about attentional TMS is to forget about it.
Yeah. And that's the thing, by recognizing what it is, that as
That's right.
attentional TMS, you can say, oh, this is that. Just the way someone would say, like, oh, this is my in-laws over here for the weekend, you know?
That's right.
That's can just put it in that column. Or this is, I stubbed my toe. This is that fracture. Well, that's attentional TMS right there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I said there are these two parts. There's the actual physical and symptom relief, and then there's living in the power column, and you're thriving in both. And then there's this new thing that we're discovering right here as we talk, which is, and on top of it, when the attention's brought back to it, even briefly, there's that old cycle that can pop up a little bit and kind of try to draw you back in. Return to the power column, and it just disappears.
Yeah. And I also believe that when you see it come back, it's almost a confirmation that it's attentional.
Exactly, right. Because what are the chances that it happened to come up right when you emailed me?
When you think about it, or when someone asks you, how you doing? How's your back? How's your tennis elbow? Oh, it's horrible.
Yeah, actually, and I call those triggers from society. They're everywhere. People, it used to be all the time. People would say to me, "Oh, I forgot you need a straight back chair," or "Oh, how's your back?"
Yeah.
And I was like, I wish you all would stop saying these things, because it would bring me back. And that's part of how I understood. Listen, all of the concepts I understand through myself. I did have the experience of, and attentional TMS was part of it. I just was always thinking about it. I forget to think about it all the time now. And actually, I would say I've gotten even past that. It used to be that I would manage to forget about it, and that was good, and I just hoped I would continue to forget about it. Now it doesn't matter whether I'm talking about it or not. I've lived so long in the power column now that I don't really even need to forget it. And I think you're at that point too, actually, for the most part, because I can see it's not like it panicked you or anything. You were just interested. You were like, okay, that's interesting. Your power column is really thriving, and it's just great to see.
I had a question for you, and that's, do you feel like there's a shift in the narrative around health, or around how our biology, our physiology works, that these ideas are becoming more mainstream, becoming more accepted? What we're talking about, the work that you do, the work that Dr. Sarno.
Well, it's interesting because to have a viewpoint on that, I sometimes need to step back from it because I spend so much time in this world. But I also do pay attention to, well, what are the people who have no idea about this saying? And yes, I do think that I would say the last 5 years have been really, really great for this. I'm hearing it talked about more regularly in mainstream, TV shows or things on the radio, all kinds of things, podcasts. So it feels to me like we're headed towards a tipping point where people are going to really understand this. And my hope is that my system and my book, which will be coming out soon, is going to drive that even further. It's exactly what needs to happen. We need to be having these discussions, and that's one of the reasons I'm so appreciative of someone like you who comes back to share what your experience was like, because people are going to listen to this, and it's going to be important to them. It's going to help them, and we just have to keep having these conversations. But I'm curious, is that a shift you have seen?
Yeah, I was listening to Joe Rogan with Doug Stanhope just before we jumped on this call, and Doug Stanhope, the comedian, he was saying how he doesn't go to doctors because they're just going to tell him he has this and that and this and whatever, and he smokes. But everyone's surprised when the other comedians are like, "How are you still alive?" When all these other comedians have died or whatever, and you're still in great health and whatever. And he's of the mindset, and Rogan was saying this is, why isn't stress being considered like the worst thing for you,
Yeah.
instead of all these other things like drinking and whatever. And I read also some Gabor Mate in between our sessions.
I love him. He's great.
Yeah, wonderful. And yeah, what he has to say about addiction and so on, it's so applicable that the addictions are only the symptom of something that happened to that person, or something that happened to the parents of that person, or somewhere down the line, where we're just trying to treat our own traumas, our own pain with these substances or with behaviors. And I believe with the phantom pains that we have, or the pains that we have, are distractions, just as Sarno and Mate and yourself point out, that these are the pains that keep our minds off these horrible experiences that we may never even uncover. And I think the shift that we're seeing is really a very subversive change. Like, it really undermines everything that we've been told about how to live. Go to school
in a good way.
Yeah, in a good way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because this, just buy a house in the suburb with a green lawn, put fertilizer or like spray chemicals on it, and that's supposed to make you happy, and drive an SUV, and maybe that's not for everyone. Maybe that's,
Yeah, the way I think, this is very in line with what you're saying. I think it's actually exactly what you're saying. But the way I think about it is that the body teaches us how to be aligned with ourselves, whereas society and so much of what we talk about and are told is often trying to align us with some kind of ideal, or something that somebody else thinks, or maybe something that we think, but it's not actually aligned with ourselves. Whereas the body, if we pay attention to it and we take it in this way, it aligns us with ourselves. And the power column especially allows us to break free of all those expectations, all those things that get laid on top of us. We don't need to listen to any of it. You get to choose your own path. That's freedom, and that, what could lead to better health than that? Did you ever read Lissa Rankin's book, Mind Over Medicine?
No, I haven't. I haven't heard of it either.
Yeah, you'd be interested in it. She's another MD, and she talks about some really interesting things in research. One of the things she says, and we'll have to wrap up on this for today, but one of the things that she says is that it is more significant to your health whether you have a true friend or not than whether you smoke. Now, I'm not advocating for smoking, of course. We know that is also bad for you. But it's striking that whether you have a friend or not would make that much of an impact, but not when you think from a mind-body perspective. A friend is a validation of ourselves. So the even at the cellular level, the good feeling that flows from that, it would change everything. So, and that's, to me, the power column is the ultimate example of that. That's almost like we learned to be our own friends. And all of that toxicity that we were bringing to in our own relationship, it's not there. I can see a difference in you. It's huge. I mean, I know you can feel it, and that's all the more important, but I can see it too.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on, Phil. It's first of all, it's just great to have the update. It does bring me great joy that anything that I've said or the way that I think about things has shifted things for you. And I think what you've shared here is going to help a lot of people, because there's so many people who may have a similar experience that you did, where my system's making sense to them and they're saying, but why is it not moving? And gradually over time, by living in the power column, it just flowed away from that attentional TMS and into powerful living. So I'm so happy for you. And when is this performance again? July, you said?
We're July 2nd. The festival, I believe, it's in French. So I think it's called, the organizers are Maison de Jongleurs, so the House of Jugglers. I forget what the festival's name, but you can find the information on chinlone.eu. That's our website. CHINLONE.EU. And Chinlone is the name of this ball game here. So we'll have all the information with the dates there. And we'll be doing some workshops as well.
That is super cool, Phil. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing this. It's a pleasure talking to you, and let's keep in touch.
Absolutely.
Even if getting in touch with me awakens attentional TMS briefly, it's no big deal. So thanks so much, Phil.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ratner.
All right. I'll see you again soon. Well, it was a pleasure to see Phil again, but mostly to see how much he is thriving. And on top of it, it's really gratifying to see not only that the system works, but specifically how it works, exactly as I hoped that it would and have seen that it does. And what I mean by that is that we see that the power column is taking him away from all those doubts and fears. All of the space in his mind that was wide open for that is now taken up with a drive forward and a connection with himself that's very aligned. And you can see that he's doing what he loves to be doing. On top of it, it has helped him to have a better relationship with himself, which is what the power column is about, so that he is really focused on what does he need without even being perfectionistic about it. Now, I also thought it was pretty interesting that since the time I last saw Phil and now, I created another term that proved to be pretty useful for him and has been useful for many people, and that, of course, is attentional TMS. So the idea that we can't get our mind off of the symptoms is a part of the process that can happen for many people. It certainly did for me. When I had my back pain, I'd go to sleep thinking I'm having back pain. I'd wake up thinking, how's my back? That attention to the symptom feeds the doubt. In fact, I would say it is a form of doubt. And when we move into the power column, we're able to move past it. So Phil was able to do that, moved past the physical symptoms so that they actually are significantly reduced and actually pretty much gone. But on top of it, he's living powerfully. And that is what I love to see. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and we'll get back to you personally.